On today's episode of Finside the NFL, we'll dive in too deep with Neal Driscoll. He's been a madman on X. He's all about the soft rebuild. So we'll see what he says in regards to whether Mike McDaniel is on the hot seat or not. Plus, man, did the Dolphins have a concussion problem? Because now it seems we might be down 2 more starters for week 4 due to concussions. We got a lot to talk about on this episode as we prime you for the week 4 Monday Night Football matchup with the Tennessee Titans and the Miami Dolphins. So smash that like button, subscribe if you're new, and let's get into this.
Touchdown! You have got to be kidding me. Jalen Waddle has a Dolphin touchdown. And he will score! Down the near side, that open. Touchdown! The run from Tua Tagovailoa. Touchdown! He's going deep. He's got it for a touchdown again. Touchdown!
Beautiful day to be a Dolphin fan. Let's go!
You're listening to Fin Too Deep.
Tua back to throw. Blitz coming. They get to him. No, he takes off running. And he's in. Touchdown, Miami.
With the 6th pick in the 2021 NFL Draft, the Miami Dolphins select Jalen Waddle.
Giving you unfiltered, informed, and controversial takes on the Miami Dolphins and the NFL Draft. Here's Reason and Neal.
What is good, Fin Nation? What's good? It's your boy Reason, and we are back here for another one. Before we get started, shout out to Brittany in the chat, and shout out to everyone in Florida right now dealing with the hurricane. Stay safe. Lock it down, baby. So, there's more than one hurricane rolling through Florida right now, and it's just not Cam Ward. So, shout out to all of you guys. Stay safe. Neal. We meet again, and it didn't get much better than the week before. And instead of losing one player to concussion, our star quarterback, we've now lost 2 more players, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on here. It just didn't get worse. Injuries piled up again. Even backups were getting hurt, like Storm Duck. And the Miami Dolphins, they were in it till the 4th quarter, and then Seattle pulled away with that final touchdown to make it 24-3. How are you feeling now heading into week 4 and looking for revenge against Will Levis, who's been absolutely, and this is coming from Will Levis guy, he's been absolutely awful this season, making boneheaded decisions, boneheaded mistakes, and yet the Titans are still favored on opening lines over the Miami Dolphins heading into Monday night.
Yeah, man, I'll say, there's a lot to unpack in the last game. It's not, yeah. I'm on an hour and a half sleep right now, but all good. It's one of those things, man. There's a lot to unpack, and for me, let me start with what I think is the good. For Anthony Weaver, looks like he was a strong hire. That defense, I think, does not have the amount of talent that it had in the past, but I think he's getting better results than that. I was impressed by the defense's resolve and fight all game on Sunday. I thought they did enough to put the offense in position. And when I'm watching that game, I'm just like, all right, there's no way the Dolphins offense is going to do nothing. Like, they have Tyreek Hill, they have Waddle, they have 8-chain, and every drive, and it was like one more drive closer to the end of the game. And I was just absolutely befuddled. And like, I am not 100% out on Mike McDaniel yet. I'm like 75% of the way there. I'll be 100% honest. For me, there's 4 key components of a good coach. There's preparation, there's game day execution, There's the ability to adjust, and there's accountability. Mike McDaniel batted 0 for 4 for me against the Seattle team that I think we should be able to beat. I think the game plan sucked. Running the ball 18 times without Tua Tagovailoa, throwing it with 32 times with Skyler, and only a third of those targets going to Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, the receivers that you're paying $60 million. It just doesn't make sense. I'll be honest, Reason, I was alarmed by how lost Skylar Thompson looked. I said he looked like a deer in headlights, but by saying that's
he looked like he did as a rookie.
Yeah, but even dude, have you ever watched a college or professional football game where there's no time left? You're at midfield. What do? You throw it to the end zone? What was he doing? I hate to say it, he got himself hurt, by holding onto the ball and taking those big crushing hits, like he did.
I was saying the same thing during my live reaction, throw the ball to the end zone. What are you doing?
And they gave the worst case was they gave him another play, and he still did it. And I was just like, "What are you trying?" And then he threw a slant that skip hopped 10 yards. It was one of the worst abysmal quarterback performances you'll ever see. I don't know how you hang on to Skylar Thompson on your roster, and we have to win 2 of the next 3 games, or the season's over. That's where we are. We have the Titans at home on Monday Night Football. The Titans have a better defense than Seattle. They do. But Will Levis is a turnover machine.
Yeah.
You're going to see some more of that from the defense. Do we know who's starting yet? They're not naming it.
I personally think it's going to be Tyler Huntley. Now, I will say this. Listen, I know he's not a world breaker, and I know he's not good. But Tim Boyle did a lot of good things when he came in there. And I sat back and I was like, my God, if we would have started that game with Tim Boyle, would we have actually had a chance? Because here's the thing. You go back and you watch the All-22. When we got the ball inside the 6-yard line off that pick, right? That first play, do you remember the play where Achane slipped trying to run?
Yeah.
Okay, if you go back and watch the All-22 from the goalpost view, Ingold and Armstead had opened the hole. That's why he slipped. He was trying to cut back to the hole. The 6 was there. If he gets that ball in there and he scores 6, and then if Boyle, after dropping a complete anticipatory dime to Jonnu Smith for that 13-yard gain, he dropped that dime to Durham. If Durham catches that and Achane hits the hole, we're talking about a tie game, bro. And I think Tim Boyle – listen, I think he gives you a better chance to win than Skylar Thompson at this point. But at the same point, Tyler Huntley, this is where I think they're going, dude. I think because, listen, I talked about this. I know on X there's been quite a back and forth between Ace Perhead, Kyle Krabs, and Eric Smith over the offensive line, in case you haven't seen.
I got to see it.
But pretty personal there for a sec, where Ace Perhead was saying Kyle Krabs had terrible takes, and I
didn't see that. Wow.
It kind of said that his evaluation was insane. It got kind of heated there for a little bit, right? And it's all been about the offensive line. And this is how I view the offensive line, because I've watched the All-22 like Kyle Krabs and Eric, and I'm sure Ace Perhead has. But Ace Perhead's coming from more of a PFF analytical point. He's looking at pass rush mitigation and stuff, like screens and play actions and stuff. This is how I view the offensive line. I don't know if you feel the same way I do. Armstead, when he's healthy, has been good.
Yeah.
Right? Lamb has been very up and down when he's had to come in for Armstead when he's gone down.
Right.
Robert Jones, I've said since the preseason, he doesn't belong as a starter. The guy, I don't think he's an NFL talent. Goodbye to the XFL or UFL or whatever the hell it is now. Beasts, okay? Aaron Brewer, I'll stand by this. Aaron Brewer's been one of our best offensive linemen, if not the best and most consistent offensive lineman. There has not been much of a drop-off from Connor Williams, said there would be all offseason when people were panicking, and I said, Aaron Brewer's going to be good. Watch. Anyways, Liam Eichenberg, he's been average-ish. He's had moments where he's below average, and he's had moments where he's average to a little bit above average. He's had that type of campaign, it looks like to me. And then Austin Jackson, he let up that sack in the first game. He looked rough when they were pinning the ears back in against Buffalo because we were down by so much and they could just rush the passer. He looked rough against Von Miller, but I concede that probably a lot of people would look rough in that situation to Von Miller. And he has had moments where he's looked like not having Robert Hunt next to him and having to make up for Liam Eichenberg has been too much of a task, but he's been average. Austin Jackson's been average. He hasn't been terrible or horrible.
I thought his Seattle tape was a little better than I anticipated when I rewatched it. I thought Austin Jackson was a little bit better in Seattle than I took when I watched it at first glance.
Yeah, I think he's been average to above average. He's had terrible moments.
I think he's kind of like the middle of the pack right tackle in football.
Yeah, agreed. I would agree with that. So I don't think it says, but I will say this. If you get Lynn back or you upgrade at left guard, I think the whole unit will leap in play.
Right, dude, I couldn't agree. I actually think the Dolphins, the offensive line's been taking a lot of bullets, and there's a lot of procedural penalties, a lot of that stuff still going on with this team. Like, I'm putting that more on Mike McDaniel than the talent on the team. Like, I was joking with my friend. He's like, dude, it's going to be so hard to win when the Bills, they beat you twice every year. I'm like, yeah, but the play clock beats us 10 times a game. Like, a year. Like, we can't beat the play clock. That's our own worst enemy. But I actually think that when Patrick Paul settles in, he only played one snap and he was driving a linebacker back halfway through the end zone. But I think that at left tackle, center, and right tackle, you're actually set up pretty
You're
well.
Okay.
Aaron is the best offensive lineman on this team right now. And he is.
I would agree.
I know the guards are not good enough. I know that that's the biggest problem with the offense. And I think they have to sign one and draft one. And when I say draft one, I'm saying round 2 at the latest.
Yeah. I think it's also down to the abilities of these guards, Neil. Like, if you look at Eichenberg and you look at Robert Jones, they work better in a phone booth. They're not guys who thrive in space, who you can trust pulling. They don't have the footwork. They don't have the athleticism. You see sometimes low effort from them when they get in space, right? That's the problem, I think. I think you could get away with average guys, but who are capable in space, who are capable pulling, who are capable then working outside of a phone booth. This is why I think, Neil, we are so good running the ball in between the gaps right now compared to off the edges, because when you're running off the edges, you start asking those guys to do things they're not good at. Right. But when you're running up the gaps, that's where they're most comfortable. And I think that's why we're averaging over 4.6 yards running through the gaps, and we're averaging like a little over 2 yards running off the edges right now. So I think that's why you're seeing that stark difference right now, is because of you have limitations to the guards you and I are discussing right now that don't allow you to execute what you want to do.
Right. And I think that they have to take a play out of the Chiefs playbook when they lost the Buccaneers the Super Bowl, look in the mirror and be like, okay, we have what we want here, but we know the line's inadequate. And think about this, right? Like, I'm just going to name a scenario. It's expensive. So you're probably going to have to cut Bradley Chubb as a post-June cut.
Well, we think that's coming anyways. Yeah, but anyways, hit me with it.
I go out and I say Trey Smith from Kansas City. He's going to shake free because they're already paying Tooney. They're already playing Creed Humphrey. He's a top 5 right guard in football. And then in round 2, you draft Tyler Booker. You put those 2 guys at your guard, and you just taking your offensive line to the laughingstock of the NFL, to one of the better interiors in all of football. And it's expensive. But that's the type of dramatic move I think they have to make, because here's what we can all agree on, right? And the elephant in the room. What happens with Tua? Tua's coming back. I don't think you or I think any differently. He's going to play football. I don't think the Dolphins are going to move on from him after this year if he stays healthy, right?
Yeah. But
I think they need to build a wall in front of him, and I don't know if that necessarily solves Tua's problems at all, with getting injured or available, but I think we can all agree that I think Tua's ability to get the ball out so fast is actually a double-edged sword, where it's great that Tua can do it, but it lets the front office be lazy, right? It lets them think, oh, we don't need to invest in our offensive line because our quarterback gets rid of the ball in 2.3 seconds, right? But we've seen how cerebral Tua can be with a clean pocket, right? He's as good as an in-pocket passer in football with a clean pocket, right? Why not give him the platform to be his best version of himself instead of trying to adapt him to someone he's not. Because honestly, I don't care if Tua can run the football. I don't want Tua to run the football. Like, I don't need him to be 205 pounds and running the football. I need him to be playing football, right? So
Yeah.
I think the Dolphins,
he's got to realize he's a pocket guy, like what Manning was, what Brady was. You got to stick to what you do best and leave it there. Now, do we want you to run a little bit and extend? Sure, but we don't want you to, yeah.
But I think it doesn't change it. Like, you need a contingency. You need at least a guy that you draft in round 1 or 2 in the draft, or you go sign, because like this.
Well, we know they're not taking the interior offensive line in round 1. That's just not his style.
Like, I think Tyler Booker's a guy in round 2. Like, I don't know.
Clay Webb's a beast, Timothy. You're right. Yeah, he's a beast. There's a couple good guys, right? Like Donovan Jackson's coming out. Donovan Jackson's coming out, right? Like, there's a couple of good guys.
Jaden Roberts from Alabama.
Tate Ratledge, he's coming out too.
Yeah. And there's also Jared.
You said Jaden Roberts, right? Because there's Alabama guards coming out up to yin yang.
They are so good, man. The Alabama interior is so good. The Georgia interior, they have 3 guys. They have Dylan Fairchild, their center. They have what's his name? You named him, Tate Ratledge.
Yeah.
They also have a tackle who's going to kick inside of the next level, Ernest Green III, who looks really, really good as a player. I mean, there's going to be good off the interior. They just got to pull the trigger on it, man. They got to stop being so cute. You know what I mean? It's one of those things. But you and I agree with this, Reason, and I've heard.
That's Javon Holland's father. Shout out to Papa Holland over here. First of all, Papa Holland, I want you to go back to October, of 2021, and go find a video from me where, I called the shot with Javon Holland. That kid, coming out of Oregon, there was not a bigger fan in his fan base than me of Javon Holland. The guy was freaking Jamal Adams, where he's using the slot on the boundary. But you've got a father of a player right now saying it has been football malpractice by Grier to not fix and invest in the interior of the offensive line.
Well, and a football player that would be malpractice if you don't get an extension done with him sooner than later, right? Like that's another thing. Javon Holland, if he is not part of the nucleus of this football team after what we've seen for 4 years, Chris Grier is still asleep at the wheel, and that's going to be a big conversation that we're going to have for a long time based off the results that we see here. But you and I are big Chris Grier advocates. We have been. I'm out on Chris Grier. So
by the way, I was joking. It's not his dad.
Okay. But I am out 100% on Chris Grier at this point, because it's not just the offensive line to me. You and I have sat on this for 2 years on this show talking about our love for Tua. But with that said, it's a different scenario than most places. You need a good backup quarterback to have them. We've seen the Vikings win with Sam Darnold. We've seen the Packers win with Malik Willis. We see the Steelers at 3-0 with Justin Fields. We see Andy Dalton come in and make a Carolina Panthers team look like the worst team that we maybe have ever seen look very good. To me, that is very frustrating, because the Dolphins have $24 million in cap space, but they're starting Skylar Thompson. The arrogance of Mike McDaniel in that scenario and the game plan show me that he thinks he can get any quarterback to cook in his system, and it backfired on his face big time. This Monday night game in front of the the world, right? Like Monday Night Football, 7:15 kickoff. We're going to learn a lot about Mike McDaniel, man. Can he be humbled? Can he put his stubbornness and arrogance at the door and learn how to coach football and we're not good enough to impose his scheme on people, right? We need to adapt. We have backup quarterbacks. And unfortunately, if it is Tyler Huntley, and who I love better than any option we have, unfortunately, I think Tyler Huntley is going to face some unreal expectations as well. Like, I think he's an upgrade to the quarterbacks we have, but that's not Lamar Jackson, guys. That is not the same player.
Yeah.
We're getting a guy that he will make mistakes. It's a new system. He'll probably throw a couple picks, but he can make some plays that these other quarterbacks can't. I'm just at a part for me personally where, like, the offensive line and the backup quarterback were our big concerns. Why the hell did the Dolphins not do something? It's interesting, man, because they have to win 2 of these next 3. They have to.
Well, it's funny. I was on Twitter last week and I said, I just want them and this is assuming Tua is only out for 4 games. I said they got to go 2-2. Oh, 2-2. This team should be 3-1. They got a chance to win all 4. I predicted them on my preview show. I predicted them to lose against the Titans. Against the Seahawks. Yeah. I didn't think we'd win that game.
Coast trip, backup quarterback, it's tough.
Yeah, so I and then I knew what Skyler was, right? So, yeah, I just, but now all those fans that hated on me for saying we need to go 2-2, I bet you they would take 2-2, like right now. They'd take it after what they saw last Sunday.
Yeah, I'll say this: based off that offensive performance against Seattle, I'm concerned if they win a game. I'll be honest; I can't sit here like New England. I think we should be able to beat. But, I mean, I got to see the quarterbacks get in here and play, man. And I got to see Mike McDaniel adjust. Like, the time and rhythm offense that we've been running has to go in the trash can until Tua's back. But I will say we are slowly learning that Tua Tagovailoa was a lot better than people gave him credit for.
Oh, I thought anyone could run this offense, bro.
Because Skylar Thompson looked like Neal Driscoll running an NFL offense out there. It's one of those things that
That's damning to me, right? Tim Boyle comes in there, looks that decisive, operates the offense much smoother. He's anticipating throws. He's reading the defense and processing the field. And he'd been here for like 3.5 weeks, and he looked better than a guy who'd been here for 3 years in that offense.
Right. And look, and that's where, so like for me, like
that's damning, Neil. That is damning.
Well, and that's where I think that the conversation around Tua is one of the hardest conversations we're going to have as a football fan, team, whatever it is, because like we see how good he is, but we all cannot ignore the availability. Like that thing that you said on your show last week that Barry Jackson posted to me, man, that was like very, very critical information. And obviously the records weren't in front of that doctor, but that scares me. I don't know if that scares you, but like I do worry that Tua was another concussion.
Today has not been a good day for me. I have heard a lot of, I don't want to say pessimistic, but non-optimistic things regarding the Tua situation. I've had a plethora of information come my way today,
right?
And it's not, the stuff isn't the most encouraging that I've heard today. So, I mean, still got to play out, but it's just, I don't know. This situation is
right.
I don't know anymore if he's going to be back for Arizona. Now, part of me still says, if he gets cleared by his neurologist and the NFL's neurologists and by the doctors, and we're 2-3 or 1-5 or 2-4 or whatever the case may be, is I could see Chris Grier trotting him out there because they're trying to save jobs now.
Right. See, I also think they could use Tua's situation as their mulligan for the whole team, for McDaniel, for Grier.
I don't know if Grier gets that though, man. How many mulligans has he had, bro?
A lot.
That's what I think. See, when we think about it, he barely survived the Flores firing. Do you think he would survive all the resources being spent from money to draft picks and it blowing up in your face like this? Especially if Stephen Ross has to sit back and watch the Bills go to the AFC Championship or win the Super Bowl, God forbid, for all of us. Yeah. After we thought we should be passing them this season.
Yeah, I'll say this about the whole quarterback situation, right, and everything. Like, I'm with you. I think Grier needs.
So let's talk about it. You start and say what you say and connect off this. Is Mike McDaniel on the hot seat right now? Go what you got to say about Grier and then add on McDaniel. But is he on the hot seat right now for you?
The reason for me he would be is because I've never seen it work when they fire a GM and keep a coach. When you give that GM hire the ultimatum, like, we'll hire you, yet you have to keep Mike McDaniel, it doesn't work. But what I'll say to this is I will say that there's an intriguing part of me with Mike McDaniel that, like, whether Tua's back or not, like, let's just say in a world that Tua doesn't play for the Dolphins again, I would be interested to see what a quarterback who has the ability to create off script could do in Mike McDaniel's offense. I really would like to see that. I have a feeling that, because I've heard some stuff around Tua that you mentioned earlier, and I don't know. Like, if you ask me today, is Tua the starting quarterback in the first game of September next year for the Miami Dolphins? It's not as a no-brainer as it once was for me, right? Like, I have concern. Like, I don't know what's going to happen, but Chris Grier has used up his lives, like you said. Like, that has 9 lives. Like, Grier's had 20 years. Like, and I do think there's a part of this where
part of the losing culture, Neil. He's been here for 20 years. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. Like, maybe it's not all directly on his shoulders, but he's like, that aura around a guy who's been around, like, that's when we started to fail as a franchise. You know what I mean? When Chris Grier came in, and I also don't think that he is the main reason for a lot of that. I actually think a lot of this still is Stephen Ross is the owner. It is what it is, but sometimes it just doesn't work. Like, I was on a radio show in Baltimore this week, and they were talking about John Harbaugh and has he used his 9 lives in Baltimore? And what I said is John Harbaugh's a top 5 coach in football.
He is.
That's what the resume says. But that doesn't mean that he has not maybe hit the expiration date as the coach as the Baltimore Ravens. Sometimes a good organization and a good coach just need to separate. And
you want to hear something wild? Based on what I saw with Flacco. I think offensively for what he wants to do, and this is people are going to think I'm wild for this, but I believe this. I think he would win a championship with another pocket guy like Tua. I don't think offensively, look at his principles from when he played football. I don't think like he's gotten playoff wins, et cetera, but I don't think what he wants to do at the foundation offensively is what he's doing with Lamar. I don't think that is. I think he wants a power run game and a pocket passer. That's what I think he wants. And right now he's got the power run game, but he's got a guy who's not so great in the pocket.
They have an offensive coordinator problem, man. They cannot figure out who they want as their offensive coordinator.
Yeah.
They got this guy Todd Monken. They thought he was going to, move mountains to make this offense great, and he has not unlocked Lamar. He's actually put more on Lamar's shoulders. And I'll say this, like, I think Lamar has actually carried a bad Ravens team, despite them being 1-2. But like, they play the Buffalo Bills on Sunday night. They play Cincinnati. Like, I could see a scenario where John Harbaugh is available after.
But that's why I think Harbaugh hasn't gone out and gone heavy and serious on receivers. What am I going to do with? I'm going to pay these receivers all this money, and I got a guy. I mean, you saw it last year. How many times was OBJ wide open? And say, get me the ball, and he was either overthrown or the read wasn't made. That's why he's skimped on the receivers, because he's like, they're going to be useless for me.
Right. I hope there's an epiphany in that front office. It's like, hey, Chris Grier, man, like, we love you, dude. You're our guy. We love you. But we've seen the same thing over and over again. We like, as fans, like, I was talking to Jennifer about this the other day. Like, you spend your hard-earned money to go to these games. Like, the second half of the Dolphins game in Seattle, and I've been through losing, right?
There's someone in my chat, they spent $3,000 to go to that game, the Seattle game.
Dude, that, like, I didn't even have fun watching the Dolphins on Sunday, right? And like, they've lost, and I still have fun. Like, but like, it wasn't
when they're competitive, right?
Like, that quality to me was like, I literally sat there in disbelief. I couldn't believe how inept they looked. Like, I would never have guessed Skylar Thompson would have thrown that bad of a performance ever. So like, to me, that's where it's like people get upset when you say, and what's crazy is when I usually go on one of my classic rants to tear everything down, I lose a lot of followers. I gained 150 followers.
They're flooding. They're flooding to the negativity this time around.
Yeah, it tells me that people are tired of this shit, and like, I think we all deserve better. Now, look, when your quarterback goes down, if Pat Mahomes goes down for the Kansas City Chiefs right now, they're losing games. If Lamar Jackson goes down for the Ravens, they're drafting top 10. If Josh Allen goes down in Buffalo, they're drafting top 10. That's what happens when you lose your franchise quarterback. I just hate that we didn't have a better contingency plan than Skylar Thompson. We all saw it in the preseason, man. He looked awful.
But hey, do I got to remind you of 2020? What was it, 2020? It was 2020, right? Where the last game wouldn't get in against the Bills, and Josh Allen lit us up, and then they benched him, and we all thought we might have had a chance to come back because they brought in Matt Barkley, and then he lit us up in the second half.
I do remember. Yeah.
Oh my God! But look at what KC did, bro. If Mahomes goes down, they got Carson Wentz.
Right.
Like a guy who at one point has played an MVP level in this league that year before he got hurt when they won the Super Bowl. He was at an MVP level that year, right? So here's where I stand on this hot seat thing. I don't think McDaniel's on the hot seat. This is how I see this going. Unless, now, he can outcoach himself out of a job, and I've been very clear about this. The way you've lost the last 2 weeks, if you get blown out by 3 or more scores for like 8 to 10 more games this season, you're probably out of here, brother. This is what I think is going to happen. I think Grier's going to fall on the sword. And what I think is going to happen is they're going to bring in, we saw them do it with McDaniel, bro. I think what they're going to do is they're going to go get a GM and they're going to say, hey, listen, you got to be able to at least collaborate with Mike for 1 year. We love him in this building. We just paid him. You want him to make some concessions, like give up play calling and having less say on personnel moves? Go ahead, right? And if he doesn't make those concessions, you have our blessing to get rid of him. We saw them do it with McDaniel when they forced his hand on players from Eichenberg to Jackson to, hey, people will say Tua as well. And they also forced Josh Boyer and Danny Crossman on him because remember, he wanted to bring in Fangio as soon as he came here, but they said, nope, we want you to give Josh Boyer a year, right? And then after the year didn't work out, McDaniel got his move, got him out of here, blah, 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 blah. Now, I want Louis Riddick if they're going to go get a GM, all right? Now, it has nothing. The point I'm about to make weighs nothing on this, but this is what I think. This is why I think a guy like Riddick would make sense for them too. Riddick is a big fan of Mike McDaniel, and I think you'd run into this with a lot of GM candidates. We can say what we want about Mike, but he's pretty highly touted and viewed around the league. Right? Like you saw the preseason list coming out. A lot of people, polling coaches, executive scouts, they had him as a top 10 coach in the NFL and he hadn't won anything yet. So I think he's pretty highly viewed around the league. So I could see a lot of GMs would be willing to make that concession of like, okay, I'll give him a year. If he doesn't work, I'll go get my guy. And if he does work, hey, then I look like a genius because I played ball and he ended up being the right call, right? So I do think Mike McDaniel, unless he outcoaches himself out of the job, I don't think he's on the hot seat. But I think that seat is getting real, real hot for Chris Grier because, I think Garfield can only Tom Garfinkel can protect him only so much. I know, eh?
Sleeping and watching,
right? Listen, watching Garfield eat lasagna is better than watching these Dolphins right now. But I think Garfinkel can only protect him so much to when guys like Brandon Shore and Stephen Ross are going to turn and be like, yo, man, it's been the same thing over and over again. And that's another thing, right? Like when he got his extension, McDaniel, what was one of the key things that was being passed around? He's worked well collaboratively with Ross, Grier, Garfinkel, and Brandon Shore. Now, if you do move off of Mike McDaniel, do you already have the head coach in the building? Because the one thing I will give Anthony Weaver props for is McDaniel's been here for 3 years and he has not shown me the ability to adapt and adjust accordingly, especially in game. We're seeing the same type of ego and stubbornness we saw with Flores, just in different aspects of his coaching. And Weaver in 3 weeks has shown he's got the ability to adapt and adjust. You want proof? Go look at how his defense has been in every second half compared to how they were in the first half. He has shown that ability. Players in that room also like him a lot. You might already have the guy in the building.
Yeah.
But I don't think McDaniel's on the hot seat. I think Grier is the one who's on the hot seat. And you know me, brother. Me and you have sat up here and defended Grier. He can draft.
Yeah.
He's made big splash moves. The only thing I've continuously ripped him on since I've had this platform is he never gets out ahead of contracts.
Right.
That's been my big thing. And obviously the offensive line, right? Every year it's the same thing. it's the same quote for me every single year in the preseason. We will go as far as this offensive line allows us to. And, now I think because here's the thing, brother, if we're picking a quarterback in the first or second round, do you want Chris Grier part of that process? Because I know I don't.
No. I'm with you. We defended Chris Grier. That ship has sailed. I'm not defending him anymore.
Yeah, I'm not defending him anymore.
Bruce is in the results. And I like Louis Riddick. And he'd be
especially when you mock us, bro. When you mock us over the offensive line.
And then it comes back egging your face.
Yeah.
It's hard to come back from that. Yeah, and I like Riddick. I've been posting about this guy, Andy Rydell. He was at Baltimore for 10 years. When he left, Ozzie Newsome was beside himself. And then he went to Philadelphia for 4 years. And then he's now the assistant GM in Pittsburgh. All the guy does is trench stuff. That's all he cares about. Like, he's a trench guy, so I like him. The bad news about getting a new GM, well, if you do move on from McDaniel, is you'll lose Anthony Weaver as your DC more than likely.
That's what, yeah.
Because you hire a coach and there are people to get in there. So if you could find a GM that'd be willing to keep the staff together, it'd be interesting. I personally haven't seen it work out as much as I'd like to. But I've heard you say this consistently for the last few weeks, is that, if you let go of McDaniel, like, first, who are you going to hire? Second, is he going to develop into something great? And I think what we have to start doing is understanding that the Dolphins window, as much as we want it to be, isn't right now. It's not this season. It's going to take a miracle for this team to go on the run that they need to accomplish anything this year. So we're really focused on 2025. And I do think Mike has to prove something over the next couple weeks. But if he can get this team to win 2 of the 3 next games, get them back on track, we'll see what happens with Tua. But I don't know if you saw this. I sent you this text. ESPN Analytics predicts the Dolphins, based off their model, to have the 4th overall pick in the draft. That's not good, right?
Yeah.
Based off their model. If they do, right, like, there's a couple schools of thought, right? Do you wait till the top of the second round to hopefully draft a guy? I know you like Jackson Dart. Like, Jalen Milroe is just playing well too. He's good. He's going to be.
He needs to calm down. He needs to stay in the second round, bro.
I think after this weekend, he's going to solidify himself in the top 20, unfortunately.
But how many quarterbacks you got going in the first round?
I think 5. And that's
I think Shedeur Sanders. This is where I get interested in Shedeur Sanders. If he falls to the second round, which could happen because a lot of teams might have red flags on him because of his attitude and and they won't want to deal with Dion. If he slips to the second round, I would trade up for Shedeur Sanders. In the first round, I'm good. No.
I agree with you. He worries me. I will say this. I like the Raiders. I think will draft him in a second.
The talent is crazy on him.
Yeah, I think so. Like, I think that Carson Beck's going to definitely go. I think Cam Ward's going to go. I think Quinn Ewers is going to go. I think
Garrett Nussmeier,
Sanders, and if Nussmeier declares he'll go, and I still think Milroe goes. So it's 5 or 6 for me. And I'll be honest,
you're leaving out Dart, but Dart's number 2 in the Heisman odds right now. If he's battling for that Heisman and in the top 3, Jackson Dart's going to go in the first round too.
And look, if Drew Aller continues to play on his level, he's been playing really well. It's like people who don't give it credit because there's not that superstar, but it's a solid quarterback draft. So, like, if you're drafting 4, it's interesting to me. Like, I think you have to take a quarterback in that scenario. I just do. Like, it is what it is. The odds of you being that high again are probably slim to none. I think you have to do it. But
Brittany, the attitude could be. I mean, let's put this in perspective. You remember this, Neil? It was 2 weeks. Was it 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago where Shedeur Sanders got beat up behind that offensive line, and then him and Dion both came out and threw the offensive line under the bus to the media. Yeah. That was 2 or 3 weeks ago, right? It was it was 2 or 3 weeks ago. And you can't have your leader in the room going and throwing your players under the bus, man. You gotta you even when it's not your fault, one of your jobs as a quarterback is you take accountability.
Some of those off-platform throws, though, dude,
it's ridiculous.
Is kind of insane. Like, I'll be honest, I've tried not to like Shedeur Sanders. I've tried not to, but he's good. Like, he's
good.
Like, he had a couple plays last week where I was watching and I was like, dude, I don't know if anyone else can make that play in college football.
Buddy, Cam Ward's going number 1 overall right now, probably. There is no flyer.
Yeah, I think Carolina Panthers would the last quarterback they drafted named Cam worked out for him. I think they would take him for sure. I think he's going number 1 overall. I do. I think the hype's real.
I just don't, Neil, I just don't know. You know how this, like our scouting reports are based on the talent, but then you got certain cases where and we haven't even heard about anything that's gone on behind the scenes because Dion would wrap that up.
Right.
That attitude, man, and dealing with Dion. I do think dealing with Dion is going to turn teams off of him. You know how the old boy system works.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
and look, Dion's and the reputation's going to hurt him. I think in the stock, and like I'll be honest, like I Cam Ward I would take there. I'd take Carson Beck there. I take Garrett Nussmeier as high as 4. I really would.
Yeah, he's a beast.
I think that people think that's high, but like I think that will come around.
See, I think Carson Beck's overrated, bro.
Yeah, but you know what, dude? He has that NFL look to him. To me, he's polished. He looks like he has it. I'll be honest. I'd have a hard time passing on Mason Graham. It's not a draft show, but dude, that guy is so freaking good. Yeah. But I think you would.
And all these people are like, wait for Arch, and they're just going off the name. His start wasn't that great, my guys. When he came in for relief the week before and threw 5 touchdowns, that was great. But his first start and when a defense game planned for him, he wasn't overall that great this past weekend.
Yeah, I see. And I get it. I just don't like.
And you don't know what's going to happen in 2 years. What if he gets hurt?
Well, when your best player is Tyreek Hill and he's over 30 years old, how much longer can you really wait? Right? Because then you draft a guy in 2026 and he needs a year. I think you need. For me, again, this isn't always about replacing Tua, the football player. This is having a contingency plan based off availability. Like if we find ourselves
and I agree with this take right now. Nico Iamaleava is better than Arch Manning as of today. Yes, but if Arch Manning gets more reps and continues his trajectory, you never know. But yes, right now today, Nico Iamaleava is better than him right now. Yeah,
right. And I do think this is that quarterback that can make plays with his legs and arms, kind of NFL. That's why I like Jalen Milroe so much. I think he would do awesome in our offense. Like that Alabama-Georgia game this weekend, I think will be awesome. I think it's going to be awesome to watch. Like from a scouting standpoint, this thing is littered with picks. You know what I mean? Like this is where you're going to get a measuring stick for Carson Beck and Jalen Milroe. And then in 2 years, we're going to have a Julio Jones, AJ Green draft with the Smith kid from Ohio State and Ryan Williams from Alabama. Man, these kids are just just. But no, man.
And AJ Raiola is going to be a beast. Raiola is going to be good.
He is going to be a beast.
But he's a freshman. But how long are we waiting for these guys, bro?
Yeah, he's got to calm down a little bit of the Mahomes
Mahomes stuff. Yeah.
Still his gimmick is kind of rough, man. It's like the fake Crows thing from the NWO back in the day. But
no, we're not looking forward to next year's draft. We're talking about contingency plan because we all agree we need a contingency plan in place. That's what we're talking about.
Right. Like I'm drafted a quarterback at 4, whether 2 is here or not. Like that's what I'm saying. Like I'm that hell bent on making sure we have that option. Like,
yeah,
because none of us are gonna sit here.
Because I know you named him, Neil, and I actually really like Quinn Ewers' game. You're gonna try selling another guy who's injured to the fan base, bro.
It's tough, man.
Oh my God. But yeah, there's a lot of good quarterbacks. We've talked about this before, right? We think people have been underrating this class and there's more talented quarterbacks than are given credit to. I mean, we just named 6-7 guys that could have first round riser potential for this year.
Yeah, it's a great quarterback and receiver and interior offensive line draft
class. Yeah.
And the defense in this draft is loaded. It is absolutely low. It is awesome. Like I like corner, defensive line, pass rusher. It's a good draft. And look, like this isn't us selling the Dolphins season. We've always incorporated draft talk into our show. Like if the Dolphins go out there and win the next 3 games, the season's
we'll still talk about it.
We'll still talk about the draft.
Like, I was talking about Chop in like November last year. Right. I mean, we always talk about these guys, bro. Like Achane, we were talking about him a year before he got drafted on this, you know?
It's good to be aware of what's coming, right? Like that's what's huge here. Like to know what's coming down the pipe. When it comes to the Dolphins and the Titans this week, this is a big ass game, man. This is Mike McDaniel coming with egg on his face from last week. Like,
yeah. Well, let's talk about it a little bit because we might have 2 more concussions we're dealing with that take Armstead and Kendall Fuller out. Now, also today, not good. Siran Neal, who filled in with Storm Duck and Kendall Fuller out. And he's also one of our top special teams players. He missed practice day because of a hamstring. Storm Duck was wearing a red non-contact jersey. I mean, this could be the Ethan Bonner or Nick Needham show for Miami. And on the flip side, this is where I'm at, Neil. Just give the reps to Patrick Paul. If Armstead's out, Paul got one rep and was throwing a linebacker halfway across the field to the sideline to go get him a bottle of water. Like, just give the reps to Patrick Paul. I mean, he's not a guard. He can't work in a phone booth. He's just not a guy you want as a guard. He's going to have issues with leverage on the inside because of his height and his size. Just give him the reps at left guard, man. Sorry, left tackle. Just start him at left tackle if Armstead's out.
Yeah, and I'm done relying on these guys that just can't help us. The Teron Armsteads, the Isaiah Wynns, the Raheem Mosterts. You know who else is coming on that list now, man? David Long Jr. That guy's hurt all the time. He's always hurt. Like every play.
I think our linebackers have been our most disappointing defensive unit so far.
Right. I agree, man. I agree. And I think Jordan Brooks is good. I think he's like a good Patrick Queen was in Baltimore. I think we need to go out and find
a better partner for him.
Right. Like, and I don't know who that is.
No knock, David Long. We like you, but you're shooting way too many wrong gaps and making too many wrong decisions over 3 weeks.
It's the inconsistencies. But why?
Yeah.
Here's my question. Like I don't think the season's over, but I think that if Tua's health is not coming back for that Arizona game, then the season's over. I do. Like, I just got to be honest. So then this is an evaluation season. And I hate to say that. That doesn't mean you go out to lose games, but that means when Teron Armstead's probably going to retire at the end of the season or you're going to release him, you need you need to put Patrick Paul in there.
Well, especially if you have the fourth pick, bro. Will Campbell, Emory Jones. There's going to be legitimate tackle options that we haven't even talked about in the top 5.
Right. And because we have Patrick Paul and Austin Jackson, if one of those offensive tackles are the best player at number 4, I'm no longer not taking players because we think we have players at certain positions. You know what I mean? Like, if there's an offensive tackle like Will Campbell from LSU that turns out to be that he goes through this process and he's, an Andrew Thomas quality level tackle, you got to build those type of trench plays. So, I'm with you. Patrick Paul should be playing. I'd like to see him play a lot more, to be honest. Like, I think Armstead's probably going to play this week, but I'd like to see him maybe sit out a game and let Patrick Paul just have one start under his belt and see how he does. He might surprise us, and if he earns it, like, look, I love Teron Armstead, and when we signed him, we were happy. We had a special edition Fin Too Deep for that. I remember we had a special podcast for. But man, like, there's one thing about being injured, but there's another thing when you find 3 ways to get hurt in one football game, man. Like, that's just a different level of being hurt. Like, I hate to say it, but like, if you're dating somebody and whenever you need them, they're not there, you finally give up on them. You know what I mean? Like, those things. Like, I just think, I think it's better for Teron to retire, and I think it's better for us to move on from him. And we might have our left tackle, but we won't know that. And what a typical Dolphins move is, they don't play the young guy, the veteran leaves, and then they don't know what they have. And I think they can get ahead of this one. Because I think what I've seen out of Patrick Paul, to me, when you factor in everything, training camp, the preseason, he's ahead of where I thought he'd be at this point. I'd like to see him play. I'd like to see Patrick Paul play. I don't think there's any reason that he's not.
Yeah. So how do you see this game against how do you see this game against the Titans going right now?
I think it's going to be tough to pick it without knowing who the quarterback is, right? Because I think Tim Boyle was better than Skyler last week, but I still don't think Tim Boyle's good.
I think it's Huntley.
I think so. If it's Huntley, I'll say this. I think the defense is going to have a really big game. I think that the defense has talent. I think Anthony Weaver knows how to coach. I think they have a bad taste in their mouth because, to me, even though the offense didn't scorch the world on fire, the defense lost us last year's game against this Tennessee team, right? Like, let's be honest. It was what it is. I think they're going to make plays. If Tyler Huntley plays, I think the Dolphins can actually win this game. And I don't think it's going to be 31-10, like I just saw in the chat. But I think the Dolphins can win this game, eke out a close win, something crazy like 20-17, if they play the game right. Now, the play calling has to change, right? Like, we can't be dropping these quarterbacks back 35 times a game right now.
Like they're Tua, yeah.
Like Jalen Wright had an 8-yard run and a 9-yard run and then never touched the ball again. And it's like, let's run the ball 30 times and pass 18 times.
You know what makes it worse? When he has that 8-yard run, your very next play was a 13-run yard from Achane. Then you drop Skylar back 3 times, sack, 5-yard completion, incompletion, punt.
Right. Right.
Like, and this is what pisses me off, right? I'm just going to drive me off the wall, and I'm warning everyone. If Raheem Mostert comes back and all of a sudden you're giving this guy 20, 25 carries, I'm going to be pissed off because now that's evidence you're playing favorites. Because guess what? Devon Achane, right now he's a better running back than Raheem Mostert. He's more explosive. He's got good vision. He's making plays for you all over the field, whether he's catching the ball or running the ball. And you're going to give the lesser talent because that's your boy the more opportunities. That'll drive me insane if I see Raheem Mostert come back and all of a sudden we're just running the ball like madmen because Jalen Wright and Devon Achane alone, you drafted one in the 3rd round. You traded up for the other one. I mean, you should have been leaning on these guys for 30 to 35 carries easy between the two of them.
Yeah, and that's it. So, like, I'm not judging Mike McDaniel over the next 3 weeks just off wins and losses, right? I'm judging him off of learning from past mistakes.
Exactly.
Play calling, the situational play calling, running a fullback dive every time it's 3rd and 4th and 1, like the personnel decisions, right? Like, I understand Chris Grier buys the groceries, but at this point, it's Mike McDaniel who says who goes where. It's the coach's thing. If Raheem Mostert comes in here and steals carries for Devon Achane, that's just another quiver on the belt of errors that Mike McDaniel has made. Devon Achane is the primary back on this team. Whether he gets those carries, that's up to Mike McDaniel. He doesn't have to prove it. We've all seen it for 2 years. Like,
yeah,
the Raheem Mostert thing for me, man, like, he's been hurt at the end of the season. Now he's hurt now. Like, we got to move on from that guy after this year. Like, he doesn't even need to be on the roster anymore. We have 2 good running backs. Go find another power back in the draft. You got to move on from these guys that are consistently hurt.
The first wrinkle we see of the fullback dive before terrible play call on 2nd and 1, but before they did that terrible wrinkle on 2nd and 1, the first wrinkle they showed, the 2nd and 1 wrinkle I'm talking about, is when they faked the dive and did the toss to Achane and got shut down. You do that on 3rd down. You don't do that on 2nd down, but I digress. The wrinkle they showed before that was you had the I formation, but you had Wilson Jr. in for Ingold.
Right.
Brother, if you're going to do that kind of shit, why did you get rid of Chris Brooks?
And he's another pretender, the guy, Jeff Wilson. Like, and he's ran the ball for us in some tight situations, tough games. But, like, that's another thing, man. Like, the accountability is what drives me crazy here, right? Like, if I go to my job and I don't do my job, I'll get a warning. And if I don't do my job the next time, I'll have a repercussion, right? And if I continue down that path, eventually they'll say, Neal, we don't need you. You're not doing what we're paying you to do. Yet here in Miami Dolphin land, the same people have the same problems, yet keep getting opportunity. And that just drives me crazy. And that's when I said earlier about the accountability. Like, Mike McDaniel standing in a podium with all of us watching and telling us that he thinks Skylar Thompson did a good job. Mike, you're a horrible liar. Come over to my house and play poker with me. I'll take your money gladly. Nobody believes you. Nobody thinks Skylar Thompson played a good football game. Skylar Thompson doesn't think he played a good football game. Like, no one does. Like, don't go up there and try to placate us like you're smarter than us. You're not. Your duty is to get the most out of the talent that's on this roster, giving targets to Grant Dubois, to Braxton Berrios, to Robbie Chosen, giving carries to Raheem Mostert and Jeff Wilson over Devon Achane. That is malpractice. You know what I mean? There's not people that watch football that don't think Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, and Devon Achane is the best trio of playmakers on one team in the NFL, period. You can't outsmart yourself. You got to take advantage of what you have.
Would you say Devon Achane is the best playmaker we have right now?
Yes, I think he's the best player on the offense, and I'm not just trying to – I think Tyreek Hill's obviously the better football player than him, but I do think Devon Achane has surpassed Jalen Waddle as the second best offensive player on this team, and I love Waddle. I don't know what's going on. I understand the quarterback's hurt. For some reason, man, over the last 10 games, and 9 of them, Jalen Waddle just kind of seems like an afterthought. And I think, obviously it's hard to get a gauge on it when you're throwing Skylar Thompson in the mix. But, yeah, I think Devon Achane is the best playmaker on this team right now, period. I think that's fair to say.
How confident are you our depth this weekend if we are trotting out guys like Patrick Paul, Ethan Bonner, Nick Needham, et cetera, et cetera?
The Titans offense sucks, man. I mean, they have Calvin Ridley, and I think Jalen's going to follow him around a little bit. DeAndre Hopkins is a shell of the player he was. I say that. He did kill us last year in a big situation. I just think Will Levis is going to give us a couple, man. And the Titans offensive line, they have J.C. Latham, who they drafted early. They have Peter Skoronski, but that right side of their line is not world beaters. We should be able to eat on there. I think our defense is going to give their offense a lot of problems. If we get competent, and I'm saying below average play is good at quarterback. If we take advantage of this play, of what we have, we should win this game. But we need Tyreek Hill, right? For example, not to drop screens that hit him right in the hands. Like, I know that it's frustrated. It's easy to get checked out. You're our best player. You're compensated like that. You can't check out. This team follows Tyreek Hill. They're like 3-10.
That's the thing. That's why I'm asking you if Achane is a better playmaker right now, Neil, because we've had 2 games where Tyreek Hill's done nothing, but Achane's still doing something for us.
Yeah, he's the best player of this team. I think the Miami Dolphins might be a better football team without Tyreek Hill.
Jesus Christ. It's doom or gloom for Neal Driscoll on Vintage.
I think he's out there. He's the best player on the football field.
When 2 is there.
When things are good.
Yeah, when things are good. Yeah.
Like, I told you this via text. Like, I have a feeling a Tyreek Hill implosion is coming. I really, really do. I like,
bro, when he dropped that screen, it looked like he was just disinterested.
Yeah, he was like whatever.
Like, do you remember when Skylar Thompson skip hopped that throw to him, like near the sticks on the left side? Do you remember that throw? Skylar moved out and then he threw it and it was really short of Tyreek. Did you see that? Do you remember that throw or no?
Right.
Okay. First of all, luckily he didn't make that throw, because if you watch that, the throw to make was actually Jonnu out of the slot. He got inside leverage on his man and had the seam and the open field open, and the safety was deep over top. So that was the throw to anticipate and make. But anyways, the defender was just reading Skylar's eyes. He bailed on Jonnu, and if the ball would have got there, by the time it got there, Tyreek was bracketed. It probably would have been picked off and returned for a 6.
Yeah.
And you saw Tyreek after the ball skipped, it just goes to Tyreek on the sideline. He's kind of like, whatever. And he walks out.
Well, and that's kind of where I'm saying, I'm not saying the team's better from a talent standpoint.
Yeah.
But people who've played football and been in locker rooms understand is that when your player isn't happy, all your whole team feels it.
Isn't happy. Yeah.
You all feel it.
That's why it's even more impressive what the defense did, Neil. The offense is where they're at, but that defense is giving their blood, sweat, and tears and not taking it down off, even though they got Skylar Thompson out here blowing the game for them.
Right. True or false, Reason? If Ryan Tannehill, I'm just giving a player the quality of that, is our backup quarter or playing the games right now. Say you sign him for the rest of the season. Tua's not playing. We're 3-0 in the next 3 games. Agree?
Yeah, at least 2-1 probably.
Right. So, to me, it's
we probably win the next 2 games and then lose the one after.
See, the Colts look awful to me, man. I don't know. And it's hard. And they have a lot of injuries. Julius Brent's their corners out. DeForest Buckner's on the IR. Anthony.
But that'll be the game where Anthony Richardson has the game against us. You know what I mean?
It does seem like that happens.
That'll be the game.
It doesn't seem like the guy who's on life support as a player has his way against us. It seems like that.
That's always like that.
I don't know. I will say this. It's a big game, man. It's a big game.
So who do you got winning?
I think the Dolphins are going to win something like 17-16. I think it's going to be ugly, but the Dolphins find a way to fight at home. They could prove me wrong here. I just think even with the quarterback situation they have too much talent, and I think talent wins. And I do think I think the players like Tyreek have an opportunity to set the tone in this game against some pretty poor corners that Tennessee has out there. And whoever plays the quarterback, what I want to see them do is push the ball downfield, not to Tanner Connor. Don't throw flag routes.
Yeah, because you're not going to have those too high shells, but then they're going to be daring you to beat them over the top. So take the opportunities and make the throws.
Right. One thing I like about good backup quarterbacks, I love this about Gardner Minshew. I like this about Baker Mayfield when he was kind of getting himself reacclimated as a player in this league.
Who I wanted 2 years ago, remember?
Right. I like when they're aggressive like that, man. Like Andy Dalton came off the bench slinging a 300-yard game from Carolina. I like that, man. Go out there. You got nothing to lose. If you're asked to pass, you have Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. As a backup, you're not walking into a better situation than that. You're really not. Even though our offensive line's crap, you're still walking into a situation where you have Tyreek Hill, Devon Achane, Jalen Waddle, Jonnu Smith. Like, you have to take some shots here. I thought the lack of shots downfield last week was appalling. And I do think whoever plays is a better option than Skylar Thompson. And I will say this, Tyler Huntley will take shots. If he's in there, he'll try to take shots downfield. Yeah. I hope we get that news.
And he'll extend plays, let guys get open and make the throw.
I hope we get that news in the next 24 hours. I
think we will.
I'm making my prediction that Tyler Huntley plays, we win 17-16, and that we're 2-2 heading into the game.
Yeah, because this is arguably a more talented offense than he had. Well, not arguably, it is a more talented offense, player personnel-wise, than what he had in Baltimore. So it'd be nice to see him have some actual receivers to throw to. So, guys, I'll be live tomorrow for my preview of this game. Make sure you tune in. We'll be back next week, hopefully celebrating a W. Smash the like button. Subscribe if you're new on the way out. We're on our way to 20K. We're about just over 3,500 away. So let's get there, all right? Fins up, and we will see y'all in the